Hi, everybody. Welcome to our panel. We are going to keep you here so that you can't have lunch, so prepare for a good 2 to 3 hour talk. It's going to be one. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry. My name is Phillip Martin. I manage the Zero Emission Truck Initiative for Environmental Defense Fund. EDF, just by quick background, has about 1,000 employees around the world, 800 here in the US, work on a large range of issues. I work on transportation and specifically in the truck space, but our panel today is going to talk more broadly about decarbonizing transportation. We'll talk about it in the transportation space with on-road transportation, aviation, as well as shipping. The goal is we're going to have a few questions, and then I'm going to try to open it up for about half of the time for more questions from the audience so that you all can make sure you can hear yourselves talk and not just hear me talk, because I could ask questions all day. I love it here. I'll just also offer I am a UT grad. I had the great fortune of having my senior year here be when Vince Young won the national title. So that makes me very special, and I'm very proud about that. But yeah, let's start off by, we're going to introduce our panelists and then ask them a question with each one so you can get to know them. Oh, and a quick overview, just as a reminder, why we're talking about this today. Transportation accounts for about 33% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. In Texas, it's about 24%. We have a larger slice of the pie of industry than other areas, but regardless if you're looking at state or federal, it's a huge contribution to what we're looking at here today. So I'm just excited to talk to this panel and get to know everybody. And we're going to start with Christian O'Neill, who's President and Chief Operations Officer of Kirby Corporation. There's a lot of names, a lot of tags there. Yeah, specifically leads Kirby's marine transportation group. They're the premier tank barge operator, running 1,100 inland tank barges. 3 decades of experience in maritime transportation. I myself have ridden the little duck tour in Austin that takes you from 6th Street all the way down to Town Lake in a bottle. So that's my shipping experience. So you've got that on me, Christian. Talk a little bit more about yourself and some of the work that Kirby Corporation is doing in this space to help decarbonize transportation.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much for the introduction. Although not a UT alum, I am a UT dad. So hi, Callie. My daughter is a sophomore here at the university right now. So I'm very thankful and appreciative to be here. A big fan of University of Texas and what you're doing. So you heard a little bit about the background of Kirby Corporation. We're a Texas-based, Houston headquartered, $7 billion enterprise value company, $6 billion market cap company that I hope most of you have never heard of. We are behind the scenes, moving the lifeblood of the American economy, hydrocarbons primarily and chemicals. Through our fleet of 1,100 tank barges, 290 boats, 28 offshore units, we operate East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast. We fuel all the cruise ships in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. We operate up and down the Mississippi River, all the way from Pine Bend, Minnesota, down to Louisiana, all the way up to Pittsburgh. So we are quietly and humbly moving gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, refined products, chemicals, crude oil, black oil, and almost everything in the hydrocarbon chain. That's the marine transportation side of the business. We also are in the distribution and service business, a business that grew up around diesel service generation for our own towboats that we've now transitioned into a very large power gen player. And so at the end of this year, we will have deployed a gigawatt of gas-powered power generation, primarily to data centers, hospitals, all kinds of C&I projects. And so I wanted to touch on that. So I run both the companies. I'm very thankful for that opportunity. Around decarbonization, we've got some really exciting things going on. And when we were preparing for the panel, we pioneered a year ago the first hybrid diesel-electric towboat, workboat in the industry. And you think about hybrid technology, you think about the cars that were out a long time ago. Well, to get to the hybrid, battery-powered model on a towboat was quite a journey. It was a 3-year journey. And it took the partnership of support from the TCEQ to help us going because, we needed some help. It's about 40% more than a conventional towboat. We have an in-house engineering group. We pioneered electric frac as well on the Stewart & Stevenson side of the business. And so we took all that expertise, and we own a shipyard in Houston where we build the best towboats in the industry, I think. And we have a lot of expertise around naval architecture and marine design. We also had a wonderful partner in Shell who developed the shore charging infrastructure for us, and we buy all green certified energy from Shell. We have one boat right now. It is 80% more efficient than its sister vessel, a conventional diesel vessel. And we put it on the same run that the vessel we replaced it was on. We have all the metrics, all the data. We look at it every day. Its performance, its environmental impact, and the crew comfort. Because I grew up working on towboats, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm very blessed to have done that. But towboats are very loud places, and my hearing is not as good from working on towboats as a kid. And we now have a quiet towboat. And I'll never forget the first time I rode this vessel, and they went from the generators to the battery, and I was floored. Now, that thrum of machinery and that thrum of a diesel generator, it's like a lullaby. It'll put you to sleep, and it's a wonderful thing. But we actually had to do sound attenuation and make adjustments to the vessel because it was so quiet, because half the crew's sleeping while half the crew's working. A really cool, fun project. I know I'm going a little long here, but to me, that's sort of representative of how we get there in the marine space. It was the right set of partners, the right set of expertise, the right customer in Shell who was willing to take the journey with us. And I'm proud to say we're building 2 more right now, and the next one will be launching in December. And I'll stop there.
All right, thank you. Nathalie. Nathalie Ionesco, Chief Operating Officer for Haffner Energy. She has 30 years experience working to support global water chemicals, expertise in hazardous waste, reuse and recycling, emerging contaminants, and creating CO2 roadmaps pretty much all over. One thing I think we've asked you to focus on today, since there's a large portfolio of things Haffner Energy does, is sustainable aviation fuels. So love to learn more about yourself and kind of how your company is contributing to decarbonizing transportation.
Thank you for the opportunity. So I'm based in Houston. I'm not linked to UT, sorry for this. I'm working for a French company which decided to look at the North American market due to the excess of biomass. So Haffner Energy has always operated in the biomass space, built, operated 40 plants roughly between Europe, Caribbean, Africa, cogeneration plants. And a few years ago, they looked at their process and, okay, that's not the best approach. And they developed technology in order to convert the energy from the biomass. So starting with agriculture waste, forestry waste, and other type of waste, in order to produce syngas, hydrogen-rich syngas. So coming back to the waste, the technology as it has been developed is pretty agnostic in terms of feedstock. Today, we need to process something which is less than 35% of water moisture, and it can be up to some sawdust. It can be contaminated wood. It can be some biosolids if they are dried before. That can be even algae down the road. So clearly it's taking the approach of managing waste and getting waste to value. So the first move was clearly to look at the European market and looking at hydrogen for mobility. And it was building small plants close to the biomass feedstock and be able to produce hydrogen. But it did let's say the hydrogen trend didn't work as expected. So they had to look around and say, okay, where should we pivot? How could we pivot with our technology? And clearly the gas which is created can be an alternative to natural gas, except that it has a lower NCV, and it is other contaminant. So that means that it's not something which is suitable for the North American market, but which can be suitable for the European market. But from there, it has been a journey to say, okay, this syngas, we can convert it to product with higher value. And that's when we started the journey to look at sustainable aviation fuel, where in fact in Europe there are great mandates, and in the US there are some opportunities with the incentives. So we are partnering with others in order to develop these clean fuels. We start from biomass, we go to the syngas, we convert it with conventional technologies, and we are today producing hydrogen in Europe, but we are working on many, many opportunities now, SAF, but as well methanol for Canada and US.
Excellent. And we're going to talk more about mandates versus incentives here in just a moment. But first, our last panelist, Alain Rouault. I got it close. Rouault? Okay. CEO of Watt & Well, based out of Houston yourself, but the company's also headquartered, I believe, in France, if I'm not mistaken. They provide power electronics equipment in the automotive, aerospace, energy, and industrial sectors, so completely understand why Houston would be an attractive place for you all to work. But yeah, tell us a little more about your company and how you're contributing to decarbonizing transportation.
Sure. Thank you very much. First, thank you very much for welcoming me and us here. I like your accent. Thank you very much. It's a very good accent. Yes, I'm part of Watt & Well since 2011. I was CTO of Watt & Well before in France, before I started the company here in US in 2016. And we are working in three different types of business. We are working in oil and gas, where we're developing, we develop power electronics for harsh environments, meaning that we transform electricity to electricity, AC to AC, DC to DC, AC to DC. And we use this knowledge to also do some motor controller. So we are using this technology in oil and gas, and we start in oil and gas to develop those technology in a very high temperature, high level of vibration, etc. We move also to space. We develop some product to space because they have the same constraints. And then after it came the idea to develop, because power electronics is an essential bricks in energy transition, okay? So we had the idea to use the high level of technology we develop in oil and gas and space to develop smaller converter, more compact converter, with higher efficiency. And we are using this technology to do converter to charge battery for car, okay? So what we call V1G. We use the grid and we go to the vehicle. And then we develop the V2G. So now we are able to charge the vehicle, but also to use the energy stored in the vehicle to bring back to the grid and help to do some peak shaving solution and etc. Today, this technology is not really developed in car industry, regular car industry. It's been more than 2 years that a manufacturer advertised that they will be V2G compatible and etc. It takes more time. But one vehicle is already compatible, and it's a school bus. We don't have a lot of school bus in Europe, but in US, it's a massive fleet. And if you think about that, buses, they don't work during weekend, they don't work during night, they don't work during holidays, weekend. So they are working only 2 days per day, 2 hours per day. So basically, it's a massive battery of minimum 250 kilowatts, even more. And if you add all those batteries on a bus fleet, on a bus storage or bus, I don't know how you call that. Yeah, you have all those buses. It's a massive battery that can support the grid on peak shaving, high demand, etc. So you can also have a leverage on. You are not. It's helped to not oversize the wires and etc. Just because locally you have a big industry going with high electricity demand, right, with peaks. So you can place those buses close to those facilities and help.
Sure.
So it's helped to decarbonize, it's helped to construct the grids. So I think it's a good technology. And this is what we are building right now.
Yeah, and this vehicle-to-grid technology is something I know the state legislature, they're continuing to talk about how to help move that along a little faster with school buses and how to integrate that with pricing and what ERCOT does and how you size that out. So there's a lot there. Well, a key question of the panel that we really wanted to focus on and why we titled it The Economics and Policies of Decarbonizing Transportation is there's a lot of ways to go about this. In Europe and in some states in the US, you do set mandates. You say, by this year, we will achieve this much. In the great state of Texas, we're not so much on those types of mandates, much more prefer incentives and innovation. So my question to kind of the panel, and we can go a couple directions with this, is the challenge of decarbonizing requires nuance. There are arguments that blunt policy targets and strict requirements, they are great at setting goals, but also can focus too much on meeting a target, and you lose the space to innovate, to really develop the new technology necessary to go even further down the line, make more progress towards decarbonizing. So my question is, how do you all address that? How do you address the balance between the urgent need to meet the climate moment we are in, while still protecting the deliberative process that's necessary to scale new technology? And whoever likes to take it first, but I'd love to hear from each of you about that one.
I can give you an interesting real-world example that I'm dealing with right now. So, as I said, we operate on the West Coast, California. CARB, as you may know, has put in some pretty stringent emissions requirements.
California Air Resources Board.
That's right.
Right.
And just declared the mandate, didn't have much of a dialogue with industry, didn't perhaps realize the ramifications of the decision, all well-intentioned. Because of that, there's a large number of equipment that is in excellent condition, operates well, that today can't operate in California. And the cost of refined products in California is rising in direct correlation to this. And we're a very small part of this supply chain. We're moving refined products from further up the coast into San Francisco, into LA, from other refineries. And I mentioned that we're getting through it, and knock on wood, I think we'll have a waiver here for some of our equipment in place. But it absolutely disrupted our customer. It absolutely disrupted the end user. It absolutely disrupted the service station in California. And to me, that was an example of legislation and policy that really wasn't fully thought through. And I understand the hammer, and I understand the carrot. I'll give an example. In Texas, we just replaced 6 engines on 6 boats with the help of the TERP program, voluntarily, spending a lot of capital, doing the right thing. These will take these vessels from Tier 0 engines to Tier 3. Significant fuel efficiency, significant emissions reduction for all of us Texans. In the project I mentioned earlier, the Green Diamond, had we not had similar positive support, Congressman Babb and a lot of other people are very familiar with our company, and they helped us get through that. They helped us with the TCEQ, and because of that, we have a panoply of successful projects. So, I can understand at times the motivation for the hammer and that type of goal setting, but I will tell you, as a businessman whose responsibility is to create an ROI for my corporation and my stakeholders, I personally believe you have to have ESG with an ROI. If you really want to have success, if you really want to see industries and experts in our field that know how to do it, and we'll get there, and know how to pivot. And I'll give you another quick example, and then I'll shut up. But internally at Kirby, we work for all the major oil and gas, all the major chemical companies, many of them that were just on the stage and are here. And we're listening very closely to them as to what they want us to do. Well, they're very focused on their Scope 3 emissions. We now have the capability at Kirby to provide, on a voyage-by-voyage, trip-by-trip basis, our exact carbon footprint for what it was to move your 1 barrel of oil. Much like your plane ticket now, when you get it and you see your kind of carbon footprint for your plane ticket. We look forward to that going down with the SAD. But my point is, in my personal experience, having been through it successfully accomplished in Texas with a partner, and really fighting it and really hurting my customer in California.
All right, that's great. Nathalie? How do you meet that challenge again of like?
So what is clear is that when you look at the DOE roadmap related to sustainable aviation fuel, and it's a grand challenge. There is a target which is completely impossible to reach in terms of number of biorefineries which need to be built. We will never have enough EPC companies. We will never have enough welders, engineers to develop all these projects. So clearly there is a target which is very, very high. There is a willingness to move in that direction. In the airlines, they are ready to, let's say, buy, but they don't want to buy too much at a higher price because they have a very, very thin margin. So the challenge today is clearly getting projects which are profitable, even if we don't have any incentives. Because in the mechanism of the airlines, an airline will buy the fuel, even if they are not ready to buy a premium. They will buy the fuel at the price of the Jet A, and the producer of the SAF will have to sell the credits. Or they will buy the fuel at a higher price, but they will resell the carbon credits. So there is a lot of, let's say, mechanisms which are still under development. And the incentives, obviously, if you sell in California, that's not the same that if you sell your fuel in Vermont. There is also a lot of adjustment which needs to be done between the airlines which want to buy neat SAF and the ones which want to buy blend. So all what you can do as a project developer or technology provider is make your best effort in order to develop projects which can be profitable without the incentives. And the incentives, it's good to have, but when you develop, in fact, your financial model, how can you know that in 5 years, in 10 years, or in 15 years, you will get the LCFS or not? And you don't know if in 15 years, your product will be sold in California or elsewhere. So as a company, we need to work on developing robust technologies. What is really, really difficult today, much more than 5 years ago, is to raise capital and to get money, in fact, to develop the projects. And clearly, there is EPC don't want to take any more risk by bringing some, let's say, sweat equity in the project development. So this part of the equation, when you look at the map of the clean fuel projects in the US or elsewhere, there are so many projects, but how many are really reached FID, are under construction? This quantity is very limited. The other challenge is that some projects failed for different reasons. So when you come with a project saying, yeah, I have something that everybody say, yeah, but why would your project be different than the one which failed? So that's the questions that we get every day. So we do our best effort to do something which is as simple as possible by, by using, let's say, existing technologies that we put together, still having the opportunity to innovate step by step. So we really work on developing, let's say, a strong business case and adding, in fact, different pieces step by step in our project and in our technology roadmap.
Slow and steady. Make sure it's working.
Yes, but fast enough.
All right. Yeah. Alain, yourself.
Yeah, thank you for this question. So yes, it's a real challenge. So first of all, we are very lucky because we have 3 business units. We start with oil and gas, and the oil and gas we make money, and we use this money to develop the space and the mobility industry and to start to decarbonize. So first is the backup. we have a backup to secure our plan, meaning that if the mobility takes more times and decarbonization takes more times than it should be, we are not in the need because we have those two other business units that help us to continue to develop the decarbonization.
You don't have all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
So the first thing is the backup. The second is the technology. We develop technology, and because we are mixing those technology between those three business units, we can capitalize on those technology, and we can also use the technology that we develop on other business units to use it on decarbonization. Okay. So basically, when there is new needs or new features, there is a big chance that we already develop it, or we will also need it in another industry. So it's easy to merge and navigate on that. And the third one is agility. When the IRA came up, we produce in France, everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But now if you want to sell in US, there is opportunity to sell in US because there is, I think now, US is the market on the charging station. This is the market with the bigger growth in the world.
Huge growth for vehicle charging.
Yes, yeah. With India. India and America are the best place to be for that market. But if your customer wants to have the subsidies, you need to be to have 55% of US contents.
Build America, the Buy America provisions. Yeah,
exactly. So we say, okay, we have to find a company who is able to build a product in France, but also in US, and we found one in California. So now we are launching a production line. We already launched a production line, actually. Okay. We already have products who are made in US and UL qualified. And we made that in 6 months. And I think this is due to the spirit that we have because we are still a small company. We started this business, we were 5 people. Now we have 125 or 28 people right now. But we have still the same spirit of small company, be able to move fast without a lot of constraints. And this is what saved us right now and help us to continue the effort in transition without degrading the quality of innovation.
Yeah. I love everything about that answer except that you built in California. I think you should have built here in Texas, but that's okay. I'm sure you had your reasons.
Yes.
We can get into them later.
If you want to.
Yeah. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll open it up after that. So have your questions ready for the panel. I just want to talk broadly about alternative fuels. Obviously, there's a lot of different paths towards decarbonizing transportation. You all each have used different fuels for each. Just to learn a little bit more about that. And Nathalie, I'll start with you. I know that I was reading on your website that if aviation were its own country, it'd be not your company. If aviation as a whole, air travel as a whole, were its own company, airlines would be a top 10 source of greenhouse gas emissions globally. So I'd love to learn how you're using alternative fuels to kind of address that challenge.
It's clear that aviation is one of the sectors which is most difficult to decarbonize. One day, maybe there will be planes flying with water on batteries, but maybe I will be dead by then. So clearly, there is a need for fuel, and nobody is ready to stop flying. We need to fly, so that's a market which is growing. There is this, all these airlines which decide to, let's say, move into the decarbonization. And what is important not to forget that we always have in mind, in fact, the airlines when we fly, but there is all the activities related to cargo. And all these players in shipping and which are ready. And for them, in fact, the challenge is a bit less difficult because they have a higher margin than the passenger airlines. So clearly, what we have developed by using biomass and tomorrow hopefully even getting paid, in fact, to manage waste. So that means that the waste will be a sort of revenue for the projects. We are able to develop a pretty decent fuel and at a low carbon intensity. So we hope that from our calculation and simulation, we are less than 10 grams of CO2 per megajoule, which means that it's in fact pretty decent from getting all the incentives that we discussed about. So clearly, sustainable aviation fuel, it's possible, it can be done, but to be, let's say, cost effective and profitable, you need to find, for us, enough feedstock, close to the infrastructure, and be able to build decent size of plants. So if you build a 15 barrels per day plant, it will never be profitable. So you need to scale up. So that's why, in fact, using, a modular approach that you put your different units in parallel, and you can start step by step, 2,000 barrels, and you can even add additional capacity down the road. So that's combination of a modular, but also using, as discussed before, something which has been developed at much bigger capacity. So we are working typically on producing SAF by using Fischer-Tropsch process. And when you look at the, let's say, the project in Qatar, you see 5 reactors, and we need, in fact, only one of them to already build a 10,000 barrels per day, which would be a big plant in the fuel, sustainable fuel industry. And the key is really the feedstock. The key is, let's say, the clean biomass, the access to biomass, and all the logistics, so to be close to the biomass. So we have great hopes that it can work. We need to work all together to achieve this goal. So that's for SAF. We are also working on smaller opportunities, smaller projects for methanol production, and that's more for maritime shipping. And our approach has been more SAF on big projects and smaller methanol opportunities, 100 metric ton per day of methanol. So that's, and of course, it will be location of the site depending on the demand.
And Christian, you all we're doing some methanol work as well.
Yes, so we, adjacent to our barge line, we are one of the largest fuelers of our vessels and other vessels. So we have a big business in marine fueling. Today, we're running an offshore unit in San Francisco in the harbor on renewable diesel. It's chartered by a renewable diesel manufacturer, you might guess. So there's a synergy there, but we're doing it. We've run offshore units on B20 for a year for another customer. Again, they're producing the B20. We fueled it. We do it there. Today, we're excited about methanol. We service all the major methanol manufacturers, producers in the United States. Much of that production is in the Gulf of Mexico. And so as you see the growth of methanol production, there's definitely a role for it in marine fuel. Today, we have an engine on a test stand running methanol every day, working with an OEM. And, you know, everything works out. We hope to build the first methanol-powered workboat in the United States. Wow. Internationally, the Europeans are well ahead. Maersk is building, container vessels, methanol-powered. Ammonia is also a discussion in there. Mm-hmm. It's a little tricky because of the hazards of ammonia and handling ammonia in an engine room in a confined space. But I think methanol's got some legs, and we're already down the renewable diesel route. But to the other panelist's point, the chicken and the egg around the distribution of the fuel will really be, how does it go from a pet project here or a supportive of the refinery here to being something that we can scale. And we developed a fuel terminal in the Houston Ship Channel now that can handle bio-renewable and conventional diesel. It's just like a Bucky station where you actually, you can have the mix. And so we're...
And the jerky and everything
exactly. We give crawfish to towboaters instead of jerky. They like it better. But it's coming, and we're dabbling in it. But to get to scale, we've got a little ways to go.
Yeah, and that's when we haven't talked about hydrogen even, but that's the big issue in hydrogen right now is to get to hydrogen in some spaces, you might need to use it in a different space where you don't actually have carbon neutrality or you don't have a net zero impact. But if you have a little bit more pollution with hydrogen, for example, with trucks, and that gets you to a scale of hydrogen for like steel production where you can really achieve some environmental benefits, is it worth the short-term loss in the fight against climate change to achieve greater results down the line? We have our scientists, we had a whole thing about that last week, which was fascinating because I'm not a scientist, I'm a hippie from Austin. But anyways, I want to hear your thoughts about electricity, and then we'll do a question right after that.
Yeah, obviously I'm not the expert in alternative fuel solution. But what I can say is that I'm convinced that there is not only one solution that will solve the problem. It's a mix for sure. And what I'm also sure is in every mix you will choose, you will need electric converter. Like if you take, for instance, a fuel cell with hydrogen, it will give you, for instance, 80 volt DC, but you will want to convert in AC, so you will need a converter. So having power electronics is essential for the energy transition, even with different fuel approach. And you spoke about aeronautics and fuel in aeronautics, and I think fuel is not also the only vector to decarbonize aviation, for instance. I used to work for Zodiac at the beginning of my career, and the idea was to electrify the aircraft. And when we say that, we say, oh, you replace the engine by electric engine. It's not that. We replace the hydraulic motor, hydraulic stuff that move part of the plane by electric one. Like that, you reduce the mass, you reduce the maintenance, you reduce the cost, and you increase the reliability. And it's also another vector to decarbonate as well.
Think about it in the whole picture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I'm not a real expert.
That's true.
And I suspect that it will also depend on if you are talking about short, long haul, or depending on what you can do, very, let's say, for a 30 minutes flight and ITO and so on. So.
All right, questions. We've got a little bit of time here left. And we've got one in the back there. And there's another one in the middle.
Hey, thank you for the discussion. Alain, you mentioned briefly IRA incentives. This question's for the whole panel. Obviously, a lot of those are on the chopping block. If you guys had a direct line into the administration, what would you advocate to keep around?
From federal tax incentives from the last administration, if you could advocate for something to keep, what would you advocate for?
I'll start. This is fascinating because I will tell you I almost read the entire IRA Act. And we, in our space, weren't able to avail ourselves of anything. There were incentives for shipyards that might have flowed down to us had we built at the shipyard. But ironically, for our industry, as robust as that legislation was, we never found an opportunity there.
All right.
For us, clearly, there is a big program, which is a loan program, which means that when you reach a certain level in your project development, you can have access to capital at a very interesting rate. So hopefully this program will stay in place, and all what we have heard that maybe it will decrease, but there will be still enough money for the projects which are ready to reach FID, and obviously the other 45Z related to the incentives. And it looks that it's still moving in that direction. So.
And what I like with IRA is the fact that you have to build in US. And to be honest, I think it's a really good thing because it's helped us to fight against China. And so I think this part is very good. Something that we discussed last week with somebody who managed concrete plant is, for instance, the IRA give carbon credits for the energy you consume. So if the energy you're consuming is green, you have a carbon credits. But when you do concrete, you have also a chemical reaction that creates a lot of CO2. And when you do carbon capture, you don't have incentive for this CO2 that you catch. I will add this.
Add that.
Yeah.
I would personally keep the heavy-duty vehicle tax credit, but that's because where I work, and I'm going to keep moving up in my company and get paid more. So that's my general thing. I know we had a question in the back. Yes.
Yeah, my question is regarding the carbon monetization. So currently, today we are talking the big company, the use the carbon capture the technology, but I consider to small energy project like the EV chargers or homeowner, the solar panel, they can earn the carbon. They can earn the real money from the carbon reduce.
I'm sorry, I missed the very end of what you were saying. I think I had a door open and I got distracted.
Yeah, currently, we talk about the big company like the Shell, they use the carbon the capture technology to decarbonization. So I'm consider currently like the individual people, like the homeowner, they drive an EV and they install deployment the solar panel. So like the individual people can earn the real world money from carbon reduce. Yes, my question.
Okay, can we use some of these dollars for like at the home, at the personal level?
Yes.
Right.
So
Sure.
It's for me?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I understand correctly the question, can we use V2G at home, right? Yes. Okay. Basically, based on technology, yes, you can, because all the cars, the batteries, and all the technology is ready, okay? And basically, we already do that in my office right now. So yes, it's ready. The problem, why you cannot do that right now at your home, because the car do not let you do so. Because they try to keep the battery for the car usage and not put an extra warranty for V2G. Because when you are using V2G, you are consuming the lifetime of the battery, okay? So today, except the Nissan Leaf, which is end of life, no cars are V2G ready. They are ready, but not already.
Not for long term.
Yes, exactly.
Because the Ford Lightning, you can do that. I've seen that.
You can do that with the Ford
Right.
stuff. And this is the second topic. You can also do that with a Renault car in France. You can do V2G, but to do that, there is a whole ecosystem and business model behind that. With Renault, for instance, you have to buy the charger from Renault, and you have to buy your electricity from Renault.
Yeah.
And you need to have a special contract with Renault to do so. So basically, it's not free as the Spirit in US right now. But if you bypass your safety system in your car, you can do that. I have some converters that are ready to do it if you want to. You just have to disconnect your main line from your house to not re-inject the energy on the whole neighborhood. But yes, you can. Yeah.
All right. I think, is that our time?
Yeah.
I'm being told that's our time. Thank you all very much for coming to this panel. Thank our panelists for being here.
Thank you very much.